Hi, everybody. Today I'd like to talk to you about how I incorporate play and imagination into my life, specifically with multi dimensions. And so trying to create this dream type feeling or this multi-dimensional feeling, whatever you want to call it. So I'm calling this chapter Multiple Dimensioning Your Space. So have you ever thought about how you can create a multiple dimensional feeling in your space? It's the coolest thing to do, and you can do this at home or in your workspace, or if you just wanted to isolate a part of your yard, any kind of space. And it's fun to also consider using a completely different space, like the neighbor city beside you that you don't go to often, or a place in nature. So, what am I talking about here? I'm talking about multiple dimensioning up your space. So, when I'm talking about the element of play and pretend, I want to remind you that through play and through pretend, that the imagination can really be creative and innovative. And this helps, in my opinion, to create a very multitasking, layered environment for your mind to be nourished. Imagination, as you know, is the most powerful thing, and there really are no limits of the mind. Something I often forget that is quite fascinating is that the mind cannot distinguish what is real and what is not real. So basically, you work with the imagination and you're working with a lot of power. So, for example, let's say you really wanted to go to a different dimension and meet somebody who would give you some kind of advice. And maybe you're into outer body type experiences or lucid dreaming, or maybe you're not. Maybe you'd like to try what I'm talking about. So, to keep it safe, what you would do is you would set your intention. So, you would set like your question in your mind. Maybe you're considering taking a new job, and you would drive to the neighboring city and go to a different grocery store that normally you wouldn't go to. So in this case scenario, your logical mind is totally on board because it's the real waking life. Your mind understands that you're not dreaming and that it's familiar and that it's safe and that it's daytime hours. You're just going to the neighbor city. And there's an understanding that you can relax because even though this new city and this new grocery store is unfamiliar, it's still this planet Earth. And so that is very big time when you're doing this kind of stuff. Because eventually, when you get really good at it, when you go to the neighbor city and you go to the other grocery store, just for a second, you might actually be confused and think that you are in a different dimension. So we always want to start with safety. So using myself for example, let's say I'm doing this and there I am, and I'm at the different grocery store and it's appealing for me because maybe I always buy a special name brand product, but at this grocery store, it's different, you know? And maybe they don't even carry the product. Maybe I actually have to go to a special market to find it. So I would do this kind of stuff, and it might be annoying if I genuinely needed to buy something, but you wouldn't do that. You would go with the intention of, for example, asking whatever question it is you have, or just putting it out there and getting familiar. So um, your mind builds familiarity with this concept, is what I'm trying to communicate. You're building familiarity, making the unfamiliar, visiting multiple dimensions, more familiar to your mind. And because everything is logical and making sense, the logical part of your mind is on board, because your mind's number one job is to protect you. So the creative part of your mind is always on board. The logical part of your mind requires step-by-step instruction, requires a lot of reinforcement, procedures, and will be that voice making sure, is this safe? The mind is so powerful that what is familiar, the mind perceives as safe. So even if you're being abused, because that's familiar, your mind will interpret that as being safe. So to apply that to this scenario, your mind doesn't feel safe just randomly going to some other dimension, but going to the neighbor city, going to a different grocery store, buying a different flavor coffee or whatever. It's a safe way to appeal to the logical part of your brain. It's very step by step and very reassuring. And then when this becomes familiar, then, like I said, it just deepens, and you might actually get really good at it to the point where you think, oh shit, where am I? Am I on this planet? So it's a really safe way to step into the discomfort, assuming you're interested in this kind of stuff. So another strategy is, for example, um, you would intentionally go to a place that you typically don't go to. And let's say you wanted to meet your spirit guide. So you would just pretend that the person that talks to you is your spirit guide. Maybe you'll have a conversation, maybe you won't. It won't be anything deep. But again, it's just this little lighthearted, fun activity. So you go buy yourself a lemonade and you sit on a bench at a park or at a bus stop where you know somebody will likely sit down, and you could be that person that just starts the conversation. You could say hi and just leave it at that. Or you could ask them, do you know when the next bus comes? And just keep it really simple and just see what happens, Maybe they'll end up telling you a special message. That's usually the case. So I'm very interested in hearing about what you're doing. Okay, so I got up talking and I lost my spot now. So just scanning my paper here. Um, I'm really emphasizing that this is fun and safe and pretend. So you would never put yourself in a dangerous situation going somewhere completely like foreign. No, no, just start local, because my strong understanding is that the other dimensions are very much like ours. And it's these little subtle differences. And so, you got to start somewhere. You can start here. Okay, so now I wanted to chat with you about my condo. Okay, so um, before I forget, I'm just having a random thought that I wanted to mention. Something else you can do is, like, let's say, there's a turn off that you turn off all the time. You could start pretending that when you turn off that turn off, that you're entering the other world. So let's say, for example, like I used to commute half an hour to work, and there was this one main turn off that I would turn off, and it was like, okay, now I'm in teacher mode, and my other life, the other world, is behind me, and I'm in this dimension now where I play the role as the teacher. And then on the way home, it's like when I the reverse side of the road, go the other direction on that turn off, I tell myself, okay, now I'm back in my dimension, my homeland. And again, it's really appealing to play with, because in literature and in all kinds of myths, when the road curves, that's typically where there's a weaving of the in-between worlds. So have fun with that, you know? Or something I like to do if I'm driving and I see birds flying in the sky, just for a quick moment, I'll pretend that I'm flying with them. And it's nothing major. They just mosey on that way, and I keep driving, pretend flying down the highway. If I see a random chipmunk, just for a moment, I'll pretend that I'm with that chipmunk, and together we're running around collecting nuts, and then it's okay, I'm back over here now in this dimension driving in my car. Like, just anything to connect you with nature. So if you really wanted to connect with your spirit guide, maybe you pass by the same tree all the time. Every time you pass by that tree, you can start saying, "Good morning, how are you?" And just leave it at that. And then it plays a little trick on your brain that you're anticipating a good morning, a response from that place. And again, when you get good at it, um, you might freak yourself out, because all of a sudden you're going to be passing by that place and you'll hear a little voice in your mind go, "Hey, how's it going?" And it's like, whoa, you know? Um, I love it. I love high strangeness. There's nothing strange about it. I love the paranormal. It's very normal. The supernatural is very natural. And when you do stuff like this, it helps. It's really helped me. Okay, so now I want to talk to you about my condo. So I live in a two-bedroom condo, and it has two balconies. I know, right? It's pretty sweet. So it's got two bedrooms and two balconies. And what I like to pretend is I'll start with my bathroom. So my bathroom is like, my actual bathroom. There's a bathtub and a sink and a toilet, counter, and things to put my um, belongings. But what I do is I layer it with my imagination. So my bathtub and my shower, depending on what my need is, will depend on what that environment is. So sometimes it's like a waterfall, sometimes it's this flowing river, sometimes it's a pond, sometimes it's the ocean. It just depends on what my needs are. So every morning, full disclosure, when I brush my teeth and wash my face, I don't go in the bathtub. I just lean over into it and I turn on the tap and I pretend that I'm moving a rock or something out of the way. And when I do that, it gives access for the river to flow. And then I take the water from the river that's flowing and I splash my face with it and I start to wash up. And I use warm water, but in the summertime I try to play with it and get it cold. And this is a way for me to really connect with that primitive feeling of going to the water in the morning. And I'm aware that our ancestors didn't brush their teeth. Toothbrushes weren't even in existence at that time. But for what it's worth, our ancestors and a lot of animals, first thing they do in the morning is go to the water. They go to the water to drink and splash. And typically there's little minnows and stuff swimming around. And they eat that. Or there's like, you know, the sea creatures, clams and whatnot. So it's a very nourishing time for us. And like I said, it depends what my needs are. I like to take hot baths, and sometimes I just take a bath and it's a bath, whatever. But sometimes I need a really nurturing bath to release negative energy. And I like to pretend that I'm in a hot spring, or I like to pretend that maybe I've heated up stones and that's why my bath water is so nice and warm. Just appealing to the logical mind. And sometimes when I'm in the bathtub and I close my eyes, I do have moments where it's like, where am I? And it's cool. It's cool. It's like having a dream with your eyes open. And I interpret that as slipping into the now, slipping into the collective and having access to everything. So, okay, let's talk about my bedroom. So my bedroom, is typical. I got a closet, a bed, and I sleep there. And I like to hang out and watch movies. But I also pretend that my bedroom is the Jaguar's cave. So this is the place I come to where I can really truly be my authentic self. I do a lot of my dream journaling in my bedroom. I have a lot of honest conversations, and it's a place where I feel like I can be heard. And the caves in literature are representative of the psyche. And so my bedroom is very much this place where I get in touch with my psyche and I play with that jaguar energy and I feel really authentic. Like this is the place where I can look in the mirror, and it my bedroom's become quite a sacred space for me. And I have all kinds of conversations with various folks that I just imagine, or I'll read something out, like my journal, that's something that's bothering me. And I pretend that people or spirits, if you will, are actually listening to this. And it's really special. I also feel safe in my bedroom. It's where I brush Rosie in the morning as well. So it's also representative for me as like a mother being out there, a wild animal, and then you go to the cave to feed the babies and it's safe in there. I also have a spirit guide I work with named Manus, and he's very intelligent, loves books, and he's actually the keeper of the Akashic records. And it wasn't meant to be an Akashic record, it was just that Manus really loves to read and write, and he wrote everything down. And his home became quite a bit of a library collection. And so that's the imagery that I'm playing with, you see, because in my living room, I have lots of books in there. I've got books all over the place, but the living room in particular is where I have most of my books. And so I pretend that this is Manus's home slash Akashic library where I go and hang out. And we talk about my dream journal, and I apply um, like the rewriting of the Akashic records, the editing, and I have conversations with Manus, and it just really creates this element of play. And, I could talk to Manus in my bedroom in the pretend Jaguar cave, but again, it going physically to a different location, even though it's just from the bedroom to the living room, it adds to that multi-dimensional feeling. The mind, the brain really likes to multitask. So even though I'm not aware of it, when I'm just moseying around, walking around my apartment, cleaning it, doing whatever it is I'm doing, I'm simultaneously walking in and out of the Jaguar cave. I'm simultaneously going to the river. I'm simultaneously going to see Manus. Okay, so moving on with the physical landscape of this multidimensional condo is the kitchen is really important to me in the morning. I try to do as much prep work as I can. and I've got some cast iron that I use, and I just really feel like there's this romanticized feeling in the air, this home and hearth energy, and like I'm the home and hearth. And initially, I was quite rejecting of the damsel, the inner maiden, um, and now I'm really resonating in it. And so in the morning, I feel these like ancestral type vibes, if you will, boiling water, and even if I'm just making coffee. And so typically in the morning, every morning, this is 2 years that I do this now. I'm super into Tara Wild. I'm part of her Roundhouse community. It's worth it just to get the monthly membership. And she each month produces what's called Singing the Ancestors, and it's devotional songs for the various goddesses, Irish Celtic goddesses throughout the year. So depending on what month it is, will depend on the theme and which goddesses she's honoring. And it's all linked to moon rituals and seasonal cycles. Super loving it. So what I do every morning is I wake up and I get the Tara Wild playing, and then I go to the bathroom, the pretend, waters, and I wash up. And then I go into the kitchen and I start making coffee. And even though I'm just making coffee, I feel like I'm embodying this ancient environment where women were the home and the hearth, and that's me being the home and the hearth. And I also feel like I'm this ancient seeress, and so that's what I do. I'm weaving my wisdom in the dark, including making my coffee, and I brush Rosie in my bedroom in the Jaguar's cave, and the Tara Wild singing the ancestors is playing, and I don't know where I am, but not here. That's not what it feels like, and it's a powerful feeling. And I also sometimes feel like I am here, but I feel like the ancestors or the various goddesses are coming to visit me, and it's a really special time. And so um, I do my dream journaling. So I scribe, I just write whatever thoughts come to mind. And then I read it all out, and I have like a special routine. And then depending on the time of year, I move on with my day. So um, when it's this time of year, March, I'm registered in a dance class. So I do what's called the blue light special. Yeah, it's called the blue light special. And basically, my spare room is the office/workout area. So that's what I do there. But in the morning, when it's still dark out, I turn on this blue light that I have, and it's like a disco light. It's mostly blue. There's some green and pinks mixed in there. And it's just like a little disco party type vibe. And so even if I'm just doing stretches, it makes me feel sexy, and it makes me feel like I'm this special little dancer energy. And it's a special time in the morning where I feel like my soul is evoking my body and helping me with my dance moves. And I feel the sexual energy, the sexuality of the goddess Sheila Nagig. And so it's not just me dancing and feeling sexy, but it's again linked to this multi-dimensional layer of a condo that I've created. Um, and it's very enjoyable. And so the blue light special, depending on the time of year, I dance or stretch. And if I'm not doing that, then the blue light special is basically me organizing paperwork. And so that could be fun paperwork, like setting business plans, or just having fun. Maybe like at Christmas time, the past couple of years, I painted Christmas cards. So I might do that first thing in the morning. And again, I just feel like I'm doing these activities somewhere else, and there's this appealing layering going on. And so what I wanted to share too is that depending on what's going on in my life, sometimes I have challenging paperwork that I need to do, or I feel stressed out about my bills and I'm overwhelmed and I feel like I need support from the universe. And so I'll say to the universe, tomorrow I'm not doing my dream journaling. I'm going to wake up and get the Tara Wild playing, brush Rosie, make my coffee, and then it's straight to the spare room. And I don't have a name for it, but it's like the place where if I'm struggling with challenging paperwork, I just try to pretend that the spirit guides are the ones who are processing it, and I'm the biological, just like typing the stuff on the keyboard. And it really helps me get through those challenging times. And I like to do challenging things first thing to really check it off my list so I can move on with my day. And it does help me feel more in control with my life. And because I have the blue light on, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. It just matters that the blue light is on and that there's a sense that the ancestors and spirit guides are there and that I'm interconnected and thriving. Because I didn't want to associate the blue light with, oh, the blue light's on, so something positive is going on. Uh-oh, now the blue light's off. That must mean something negative's going on. No, I always want that blue light to be on. And it's also representative of a fire. I'm not allowed to have fires in my condo, but it's also representative of like I'm home and the light's on, and I like that. Um, and I've got a string of Christmas lights hanging up too in the spare room. And again, I plug that in, and those lights actually stay on all day, because it has like this we're open for business sort of feeling. And at nighttime, I unplug it and it's like now we're closed for the evening. Um, so if you're listening to this really helps me. So if you're still listening, then I'm going to interpret that you're interested in my condo and how I've multi-layered, dimensionalized things up. And I'm really interested in what you're doing. I also have two balconies, like I was saying. So one balcony is attached to that spare room. And so I feel very sexy and connected dancing and working out in the morning. And then the balcony just outside that room, I've designated it as the goddess garden of gratitude. So it's this safe space for the goddesses. There's no patriarchy, and it's just me that lives in my condo and Rosie, my cat, and we're the only ones that go there. And I'm in charge of the garden to water it and to care for it. So it's like this relationship with the land, like the goddess of sovereignty, and I'm the goddess of sovereignty. And at the same time, I'm also trying to role model like a safe um, space, doesn't matter the gender, but that like patriarchy, no patriarchy, that this is a safe space. And I find that it's a really great way that I'm really dripping and deepening more into the present moment, just right here in my condo and how I've arranged my space. And I'll do interesting things. Like I've got some lavender and I'll pick it when it's ripe, and then I'll pluck off each petal, and I'll say something that I'm grateful for. And then I'll make an elixir or mix the petals in my like I'll dry it out and then I'll burn it later on or something like that to derive more meaning from it. And I made it a point in my goddess garden of gratitude to only have the colors, like there's lots of green, but there's only purple flowers. There's these orange tiger lilies, and then there's it's actually orange tiger irises that I bought. I thought I was buying orange tiger lilies, but whatever. And then I have red roses only. So only red roses. There's the orange tiger lilies, and then any other kind of purple flower is welcome to be there. But any other colors are not allowed there because this is like a special garden dedicated to the goddesses. So the other garden that I have, the other balcony, is just outside my living room, which is my pretend Manus's house slash library. So sometimes I just pretend it's just my garden for what it is. But sometimes I'll pretend that it's Manus's garden and I'm hanging out with him. So we're like hanging outside talking. Or sometimes I pretend Manus has company over or somebody that I'm supposed to meet. And again, it's just a safe way to play with spirit guides. Um, I also like to pretend that this garden is a pretend eagle condor nest. And I have fun playing with that. And I pretend that I'm like this baby eaglet and my job is to stay in the nest. And I don't want to stay in the nest, but it's the responsible thing for me to do. And it's a reflection about waiting and patience and how patience is a virtue. Waiting really is the hardest part, for example. And that's why maybe for pretend I need to stay in the eagle's nest. One time I was very upset with somebody. I wanted to tell them off, and I knew I would just, it wasn't a good idea for me to do that. So I put myself in the eagle condor nest, and I just pretended, I'm a baby eaglet and I don't understand what's going on. I feel frustrated and I need to trust the universe. I need to trust that my parents, the eagles, the adult eagles, are out there hunting for me and they're going to provide me with food and sustenance and whatnot. And my job is to stay in the nest. And then sometimes I'll pretend that I'm the parent eagle and I gotta go hunting and whatnot and face things that maybe I don't want to face. And I also play with the bird's eye view, zooming in, zooming out, changing perspective, my perspective, seeing the perspective of the person that I'm pissed off with. And last summer, I upgraded myself to the phoenix's nest. And so sometimes I was back in the eagle condor nest, and then sometimes I needed to rise above and visit the phoenixes, and I was in their nest. And it just created these amazing storylines that I'm in the process of writing a book about. So this to me is fucking phenomenal. This is fascinating. Um, I'm greatly wondering if you've ever considered doing anything like this, and if you're still listening, if maybe you're inspired, you can absolutely borrow one of my ideas, completely invent your own. I'm wondering if there's maybe just a random tree in your community or maybe a random mailbox or something that you drive by that really speaks to you. And I wonder if you've considered having a pretend relationship with it and working with these multidimensional layers, because like I said, your mind really enjoys multitasking. And so using myself as an example, when I'm just, walking around my apartment cleaning, doing laundry, simultaneously my mind is also pretending that it's going in and out of the jaguar's cave, going in and out of the goddess garden. Whether I'm conscious of it or not, what I'm doing is I'm training my brain. So it's the notice, nurture, nature cycle. So you play around like I'm doing, and then before you know it, it'll dawn on you. You'll just be sitting in your bedroom, for example, and you'll think, I'm in the jaguar cave. And you'll notice that and you'll say to yourself, I remembered. I remembered to remember that I'm in the jaguar's cave, and I didn't even remind myself. I just naturally remembered. That's the first part of the noticing. The nurturing is paying attention to that, and to the point that you pay attention to it, that it just becomes second nature. And when you go into your bedroom, when I go into my bedroom, I'm just like in the jaguar's cave. It's very natural, normal feelings right now. And so I just wanted to share a final thought with you. So when something that really resonated with me throughout my teaching career is that the teachers, we would meet all of the time, but we never really met as a staff. Usually we met as an entire staff, the beginning of the school year, Christmas time, and the end of the school year. And it was always very nice because often a lot of teachers are itinerant. They're only there, one day a week or half a day here, um, depending on the needs of the students, and you don't get to see them. And because it's a staff meeting, we don't really get into union issues or anything like that. It's mostly focused on positive things that are going on in the school community, like the Christmas concert and, um, maybe the school population is growing and we're going to have another division, fun stuff. And so, anyways, I just wanted to emphasize that because maybe you didn't know that if you weren't a teacher. So, typically at a staff meeting, it's positive energy. Everybody's there who works. It doesn't matter what your title is. And there's food and non-alcoholic beverages. And it usually takes place in the library or the gym. And that's because of space. Typically, it happens in the library in elementary schools. And that's my domain and passion. And ever since the beginning of my like when I first started my career, that first staff meeting in the library, I felt like I was in some other dimension where it was like I was part of some Winnie the Pooh story or something where the forest animals, the teachers, the staff, if you will, the EAs, the administrators, the counselors, we were representative of the forest animals, and we were meeting to talk about the forest and to talk about our forest community, the school community. And that was such a cool feeling. And I never shared that with anybody before. I wasn't sure how to share that. And so I'm sharing it with you today that that stuck with me. I carried that with me for the rest of my career. Whenever we were in the library having a staff meeting, I always felt like we were the forest animals and we were reporting out to each other. And I just loved it. I really, really loved it. And so I would love to hear about what you're doing. And for what it's worth, when we're children, we do this kind of stuff all the time. We play in the snow and we just get busy. We get caught up in multi dimensions. We play things like wolves and we pretend shapeshift and become the wolves. Um, I loved being a child, and as a teacher, I loved watching children get busy in the snow and sand. And they would just make like these big random rectangles and circles, and they would tell you exactly where the kitchen is, where the living room is, where this is, where that is. It was all figured out in their minds. And it was simultaneous. It was all interdimensional, but of course, at some point, children are moved away from that joy of play. And so I wanted to lovingly invite you to play. There's a child inside of all of us. Let that child play. If you need to howl at the moon, so be it. Please let me know in the comments how you multi-dimensionally are layering up your space. And I feel excited because I didn't know this, that this is actually a form of feng shui. Feng shui, in a nutshell, I'm learning, means when the land takes on forms. So, a classic example, the mountains, that jagged look that they have, the mountaintops, being simultaneously representative of a sleeping dragon. And that's why those mountains aren't moving, because it's like pretend there's a dragon sleeping there. And so, without even realizing it, I'm into feng shui, and I'm excited to hear from you. I guess I'm having a hard time ending this because there's so much more to say. There really is. And it's time for you folks to do the talking. Let me know, make a video. I have a Facebook group, Present Moment Hypnotherapy International. Make a video, post it there. Write your comments there, share them on YouTube. Super interested. Love to hear from you. And thank you so much for tuning in and supporting me.